Okay, let's get started. Before we have the introductions, let me remind you to sign the sheet if you haven't signed it. It's in your own interest because you get credit for your town. You know, you don't want to be here and not get credit for being here. So, anyway, be sure to sign that if you have to. And I'll go around starting with Brad.
Sure, Brad Nichols, Coast.
Victoria Conway Northwood. I'm Marcia Gass, Barrington.
Linda Dusenberry, New Hampshire Department of Communications.
Paul Lockwood, New Hampshire DES. Tom Jameson, New Hampshire DOT. Ed Camo, Brookfield.
Chris Parker, Dover.
Wally Dunham, Madbury.
Marilyn Barton, Stratford Regional Planning.
Cynthia Copeland, Stratford Regional.
Greg Jones, Stratford.
Okay. First item here is staff communications.
Yeah, just a couple of quick things.
Okay.
I just want to remind everyone that back in 2008, the TAC committees voted to go every 2 years to renew your representation here, and it's getting to be that time. So I'll be sending out paperwork to your communities for that. And also, it's that time to vote for a new chair and vice chair. John Wally has been kind enough to do it for the last 2 years. John let me know that he's willing to do the chairmanship again unless somebody else is interested. Wally is willing to fill in with vice chair unless there's somebody that wants to fill that role. And we'll vote on that at the next meeting. And I just wanted to remind everyone of that. Also, as you know, Dan has left. And we are recruiting for a GIS analyst, technical analyst. And we do have recruitment out, but if you happen to know anyone that you think might be interested, please contact me. And also, we just sent out save the dates for the invitations are coming out soon. May 29th is our commissioners' annual meeting luncheon. So be on the lookout for invites to that. That's it. Right. Oh yes, and we have we're also recruiting for our internship, our summer data collection internship. So if you know anybody that might be interested in doing that as well, you might be able to send us anybody that might be interested. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I do. Oh, yes.
The next item is a presentation on transportation alternative programs. And we have a guest speaker here this morning, Tom Jameson, New Hampshire Department of Transportation.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Tom Jameson. I work with our Department of Transportation's Bureau of Planning and Community Assistance, and I am the TE and CMAQ coordinator and program manager, and I'm also now the TA program manager. So I put together a little presentation. This is probably about the fifth planning commission that I've gone to, so I'm glad you guys invited me up, so we're all on the same page with this. Okay. So you're probably all familiar by now with the new federal legislation. It's called MAP 21. We're in our second year, actually, of that. What MAP 21 did is it created this new program called Transportation Alternatives. Purpose was to have a little more flexibility, but what they did is they sort of merged a bunch of programs into this TAP program. So the Safe Routes to School, Scenic Byways, we had others, TSCP, there's a whole host of things, Rec Trail program. They were all standalone programs. They've all now been put into this one program called Transportation Alternatives. One thing to note too, it's a little hard to read, but I put the dollar values. They were standalone programs, like TE got 3.2 million, Rec Trails got 1.2, Safe Routes got $1 million, Scenic Byways got $0.5. The reason I'm putting that up there is you would hope we'd get at least that much or more. We didn't. We got a whole lot less funding, so they merged all these programs together and then gave a lot less funding for the program. So one of the things you'll note through my presentation is things are going to be very competitive. So we're going to try to streamline things, but I think there's a whole lot of people with interest and there's not very much money at all. Distribution of TAP funding. One thing right off the top is that the Rec Trail program is part of TAP. It's a set-aside, which means they get their money before it even gets to DOT. And this is at the governor's level. The governor decides can either give all the money to the rec trail program, could give no money. Right now, they're currently giving the entire allotment for the rec trail program. So $1.5 million, $1.25 million comes right off the top before it even gets to DOT for disbursement. One thing that's a little different, everyone here is probably aware of the TE program. TAP actually has a population-based criteria with it. So, and there's another slide that makes this a little clearer, but 50% of the funds, there's no restrictions anywhere in the state. 50% of these funds are distributed 0 to 5,000, 5,000 to 200,000, and then 200,000 and up. So it's a little different than how we've done the TE program. This is a breakdown of funding, and before you get too excited about these numbers, just realize this is actually 2 years of funding. So what we have not spent any TAP dollars at this point. So we have fiscal 13 and fiscal 14, well actually fiscal 12 and 13 available. 13, sorry. So what you're seeing here is that, and we're really going to, moving forward, we're always going to probably do a 2-year cycle. So we would always be looking at least 2 years of apportionment when we do a round, just to make it worthwhile. So if you look at this slide, you can see there's about $7.5 million, 2.5 comes right off the top, goes to the rec trail program, and then is split 50%, 50%. So you can see when you get to those sub-allocation areas, it's really not a whole lot of dollars we're talking about. You know, if you look at the over 200,000, it's 0.6 million. So it's really not like there's huge chunks of money going to these others. But it is, when we do this selection round, we do have to give it out by these population bases. So at least 0.6 goes to that, 0.9 goes to the 500 to 200,000, and then $1 million goes to the under 500,000. And then the flex area is anywhere, no restrictions.
Could you explain a little more detail for everyone to understand? So you took the 5 million and done, so under 5,000, how did that turn out to be 1 million? Was it based on the number of towns, or what was the dividing?
It's probably more of a lead question, but we have a funding code that's associated with that population base. So that is what the federal government is allotting to the state for those population areas. I don't know, Lee, if you have a better, like why those came out that way.
Yeah, I think it's determined by population, and that's why it's, and that's how it's distributed. So
That would be helpful for towns and cities to know how it turned out like that. Thank you.
And we are creating maps too that it's regions. You know, it's like that Boston influence. So it's not like each one of these communities has over 200,000 people. It's more of apartment density type.
yeah, those are actually urban areas. Is what those are.
Yeah.
So, 200,000 plus is the TMA area, and everything.
And that mid-range is sort of all over the state. Like Berlin is in that middle range. You got Lebanon, Plymouth. So there's sort of those higher population centers are in that middle range, and then the rest of the state would be the upper right.
So if it's based on the census data for urbanized areas versus rural, is it 50,000 or 5,000?
These are urban, well, the 50,000 is the NPO threshold for an urbanized area, but the urban areas go down to that 5,000 level, and even below that, 2,500, I think, is another tier.
Okay.
So that's what you see. You know, the intent here, I think, is to ensure that half the pot, or some of this money is being spent in urban areas as well as non-urban areas.
Right.
So that's why you see that sort of any area money is consisting of half the pot, whereas the rest of it is determined by sub-allocation formula based on the size of the urban areas.
So I'm just trying to understand for the municipalities. So if you're in a community with 3,500 people and you were talking to your selectmen about this opportunity and the pool you're competing in, would you tell them that you're competing in the population areas under 5,000 pool?
No, I'll get that
Okay.
further along, but
Okay,
we're
thank
really
you.
not, this is really more of a behind-the-scenes
Okay.
thing when we go. We do have to ensure that we spend, like say that 0.6 million in that population area. But, a lot of these could have multiple funding, like the flex any area.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that.
Okay, thank you.
As we move along. It's a good question. So. Okay, so another thing we'd like to do with the TAP program, if you've worked with the Safe Routes program before, it's what we call programmatic within the STIP. And we want to follow that same model with the Transportation Alternatives program. So the program itself will be in the STIP, but the individual projects will not. We feel it fits better. Resurfacing guardrail, highway safety improvement program, all around that same model. And we found with the TE program, I guess just my concern is I've had some projects, and I had one just recently where we literally waited 6 months for $5,000 to continue a PE contract. And it was really very frustrating and it delayed a lot of the project. So if it had been a programmatic type thing, we wouldn't have had to be in that situation. So we feel we have the support of our front office as well, feeling this is the better way to go with this. All right, so this is something that we're proposing, is that we're going to set a minimum and a maximum dollar amount. And this is all getting back to two things. One is that there's very little money in the pot, so we want to sort of put a boundary on what people apply for. And the second is that the Safe Routes program has been now put into the Transportation Alternative program. We have some good experiences. I think we've gone through 6 rounds of Safe Routes, and we're finding that these very small dollar amount jobs are just not working very well at all. That we end up having engineering costs that are larger than the actual construction, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. If you manage a federal project, if it's 50,000 or 500 million, it's just about the same level of oversight. And so these little projects are just not, I guess, just not really equitable. And when they get down to those really small dollar amounts, it's a little harder to get people, they may drag out longer. So 200,000 is what we feel is, a reasonable infrastructure project for a Safe Routes project. But being transportation alternatives, what we're hoping for is there'll be a lot of combinations. So, you need a sidewalk from your school to this neighborhood, but you also want to hook up maybe the library or hook up to the park. So things that were restricted before in the Safe Routes program, they're not restricted in the TAP program. And so what I see is what could have been, okay, we've got a good TE project, we've got a good Safe Routes project, it becomes one project, and it's like, wow, we're over 200,000, it's all worked very well. And then if you've worked on maybe the bigger projects, you realize you can get up to 800,000 very quickly. So, it'd be great to see a project say, oh, we want to do, a bike path that spans our entire town, but it's going to be $5 million. That up front people know that's really not going to be allowable because you're going to take all the money. So we don't want to put the entire portion in one spot. So what we like to see though is multi-phase projects where you might have a dream of having a 10-mile rail trail, but you're starting off a mile or two, working your way down the line. And those projects seem to be very successful as they move forward. The other thing we're doing, if any of you have a TE project, we set milestones. It was done because of the need to get TE done. It is sunsetted. And what we're finding is that the milestones work really well for staff, but they're working really well for the communities as well, because, you know, they have a hard date that they can go to their town councils or selectmen or to their consultant and say, you gotta step it up, we need to meet these dates. You know, I think a lot of times that, you know, and even in the consultant world, we're a small fish in a big pond with the sidewalk project. So these milestones have been working, we're gonna continue, we're probably gonna adopt them with all of our federal programs moving forward. One thing to mention too is that Safe Routes was always 100%. Under TAP, Safe Routes is 80-20. All of the TAP, anything you apply for will be an 80-20 split. So that's a little bit of a different shift from the Safe Routes to schools. And we're also only going to fund infrastructure. So we're not going to fund travel plans or things like that through the TAP program. But John Corrigan is working, I think, to see how that could be funded. Still a very important element. It's just the funds are so tight. Our feeling is we really need to build infrastructure moving forward until we get more money. All right. So another thing we're doing, and this is again, this is internal. DOT has made a decision that we want to focus these funds. You know, as you can see, we have about $5 million for 2 years. So if you look at the federal legislation, there's a lot of eligible activities listed under TAP. We have kind of streamlined them to say, we're only going to accept the applications with these eligible activities. And if you look at it, it's really, it's infrastructure. It really, I think, is the heart of the Safe Routes program. It's kind of the heart of the TE program. That we're looking for short, non-motorized trips. We're looking for transportation-based, you know, projects. So these are the activities that we want to see. And then these are the ones that they are listed under TAP, but we're not going to accept them in our application round. And a lot of these, and before you get too concerned though, that a lot of these elements are part of the other projects. So you're going to have historic issues. You're going to have, you're going to have environmental issues. What we're saying is we just don't want a project come in that says, you know, we want to inventory all the historic bridges in the state, or, you know, we want to go and do like a big wetland study. Those are all very good activities, but we want to focus these funds right now to try to provide what we consider, you know, probably the biggest goal is non-motorized transportation. So that was why we made those decisions. But we are going to have archaeology. All those are part of the natural NEPA process that we work with the construction projects. And then we move on to, and these get to be even more, I guess, like roadway type elements, like turnouts, overlooks, viewing areas. Those projects are just going to be very big dollars. You know, the reality that you can keep anything like that under 800,000, I think, is it's very small. So we've kind of taken those away as well. And again, the rec trail program has already been stripped out.
So, construction, planning, and design of infrastructure-related projects and systems that will provide safe routes for non-drivers and less focus. Construction of turnouts. There's many different types of turnouts. There's bus turnouts that make it easier for folks to be pedestrians before they're bus riders. So
that would typically probably be more considered when you see that.
it's either.
Yeah. And you know, these aren't black and white either. I mean, if you presented to the you know, planning commission and made a good case, you know, that this sort of goes to both sides. But you know, what we're trying to do is we just don't want these funds, you know, sort of taken off into other places that, you know, bus turnout may be eligible for TAP, and maybe it would make a lot of sense, but we would want that to be a standalone project. That's the decision. We haven't really got that far. I think if you had a sidewalk or a bike path, And then you said, and that happens with TE, that we need a bus pull-up as well. That could be put onto.
Right,
Could you give us, so it says here the recreational trails program is through DRED.
Yeah.
And then you did say that you could do on-road and off-road trails. So is there a differentiation for a town to think about what would be a DRED project and what would be eligible through the town
Yes.
program?
Yeah, TE and TA TAP funds are transportation. So if you have a rail trail, and we have a lot of them, and you are converting that for transportation, so it's an alternative corridor where you're going to be able to ride or walk, but you have destinations, so you have something here and something there. That's TAP. If it's, we just want to create a place for people to ride their bikes, you know, a place for the horses, and it's just really a recreational base. That's DRED. Now, do they blur a lot? Yeah, they do. You know, a lot of times a lot of the bike paths are used for recreation, but the federal regulations say they have to be transportation. So you can't just build a trail sail to a pond and then back.
Okay.
But if you went by that pond and you connected two neighborhoods and it's an alternative transportation, it's great that you've got a pond there, saying, but, and that's allowed. The DRED would be more, you know, we want to build these beautiful trails in our woods and, you know, so people can go out and hike and bike. That's more on the DRED side.
Okay, so let me interpret this because we have a lot of land trusts and conservation commissions in our region that are working on projects. So the land trust and the conservation commissions, municipalities, if they wanted on a property that was protected or town-owned or whatever, and they want to put a recreational trail in, they would go to, and they needed outside sources, they would apply through the DRED rec program. But if you wanted to connect between these properties, you could apply through town.
Probably. If, as long, yeah, I mean, as long as those connections aren't recreational.
Yeah.
If it's intended for, you know, you can't really, you know, the road is a little unsafe, providing another connection.
Thank you.
Well, what about sharing resources between the city departments? And I have a project in Newmarket that would be a recreation trail facility, and we park it for the parking and recreation trail. But it could also be a park and ride facility, and it would be tying for a roadway. And I'm talking about the Rockland Junction area. I mean, that's something that really would probably serve both programs. And could you submit a joint application with some funding from DRED and some?
Yeah, the only thing is timing would be different. Like, you know, you would be probably going for CMAQ funds for the park and ride. DRED has, I'm not sure what their, I think it would be doable, but you know, you probably have DRED, see, I think their applications are yearly, so they get them and they
Because
distribute.
they actually own the land that the site would be adjacent to, so we make those.
I mean, before I get, just Lee, do you see any issue with that? I mean, as long as they're not matching with each other, I mean, you can
Right.
have joint federal funds, right?
Yeah, you're right. I think there would be, you know, there'd be some coordination, timing issues you'd have to take a look at. Otherwise, I think,
But you can't, yeah, you can't match one grant with the other.
no.
You can. You can. DOT regulations allow that. Federal dollars can be used to match other federal dollars.
We'd have to look at the circumstances.
Okay, let's all get into that one then. Yes.
Thank you.
My question is, in Barrington, we have a lot, well, the majority of our roads are fairly narrow, pavement-wise, and have gravel shoulders. And we went through our visioning. A lot of what I heard is that they want to expand the shoulders to allow for bikes. If we were going through a resurfacing project, would this type of funding be available for widening and paving of the shoulders to allow for more bicycle and pedestrian traffic on the side of the road?
Yeah, the TAP funds?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what they really are.
Yeah.
That's like TE, same thing, is you would have a project to create a bicycle lane, you know, which would mean you need to move the
Coordinate.
guardrail, do some shoulder widening. That's exactly right. And then what we would try to do is then work with the districts to say, when we're done our project, then you come through and resurface the whole.
Can it be used on local roads versus state roads, or are we?
There's no restriction. The only difference would be if you're going to do a project on a state road, you would have to get the district to buy into it, and then they would be part of the review process. If it's your local road, I'm not going to say you can do whatever you want, but it's under more your control in our review.
Yeah.
Whereas district has more control because they have to maintain the road. So they might say, we're only going to allow you to do this if you upgrade our drainage, or if you do this and that. So it's a little, but not really. I'd say half of my jobs are on state roads and half of them on local, and I haven't really had any issues.
I think we have 9 and 125. I think 9 could be a candidate, but I was thinking more of the local roads. Some of our local roads is what I think.
The only thing I guess I would just to realize is that it seems like it'd be a very cheap thing, but
it's not.
It can be very expensive because the shoulder really has to have that depth along with. So by the time you've dug it all out and then you have to move everything, you're going, wow, that's a lot of money for 4 feet of pavement. So it surprises a lot of people. Yeah. All right, so the good thing, TAP funds actually have a requirement that you have to do a competitive selection round. Now, the good news is New Hampshire's been doing this, I think, since the inception of TE. So we've always done competitive selection. So that's nothing new for New Hampshire. The only thing that we are going to do a little differently is we used to have an advisory committee that basically got all the applications, they reviewed all the applications, they kind of did whatever they wanted to do, and they ranked them, and that was, kind of went back and forth. Through our 10-year plan process, if any of you have seen how we did it this year, we used Decision Lens, which is a software product. Worked very well, we really liked it, so we feel it's probably very conducive to this program, probably the CMAQ program as well. So we're going to use Decision Lens software to rank projects. And the first thing that you do is you create an advisory committee, which we are actually ongoing right now, where we're recruiting members for this committee. And this committee will be a standing committee, just like the TE committee. But they're going to develop criteria for the TAP program. And then the criteria is what the scoring will be based upon. So they'll create the criteria, and the criteria will be reflected in the applications. What's a little different is that there'll be a separate scoring committee that will take the criteria developed, take the applications, and then they'll score them. So the committee is really looking at the bigger picture of what is it we're trying to do with the money, what is the most important things that we want to accomplish with this program. And that's what the criteria, and the criteria can be weighted, and the software, if anybody's had a demo, is really kind of cool because, you have little sliders, and if you say, we really want to make safety a little more important, you can slide that bar, and it just will filter everything, and it's a very interesting program. But it's very transparent, which is the other thing. So in the past, people really didn't know how this committee voted. How did this project get ranked number 1? There was really no, it was really just the members and how they felt. And there's, I guess, more political, than scientific. Whereas this, I think, is a little more, from what I understand, is it's very hard to sway the vote. If you go in there and say, I'm going to ensure that my projects get selected, it's very hard using Decision Lens to do that. That's my understanding.
Under weighting and it will be, depending on its importance in what kind of.
Well, it's what that committee did. Let's say the committee got together and said, one thing we think is very important would be regional rankings. So maybe they'll say, because all the TACs, just like you've always done, will rank the projects in your region. So maybe the committee says, maybe the number 1 or number 1 and 2 projects should get a little more weight than others. So that's where you can put weighting into this system. But this committee is going to be the one to determine that. Or, you know, if safety was their #1 priority, you know, then maybe if it's strictly a safety project, it's going to get a little more value than if it's not. So that's what we mean by weighting. And you don't have to use weighting. It could be, you know, everything is equal. We got 10 criteria that are all equal, or it could be, you know, 3 out of these 10 are really important to us.
So, question, who's the scoring team if you were the second scoring team? Would that be staff people?
I'll get to that too. It's coming. So, and that one, it's a little vague at this point too. Yeah.
So, in the 10-year plan, the thing that I kept mentioning about decision lens was it worked really great for some projects and it epically failed for others. And so, not that I'm against it at all, I think it's a great tool, but it needs a lot of further refinement. And the work that this advisory committee is doing and setting the criteria and the weights, that's absolutely critical to how the whole selection process works, in my opinion. So I would just encourage them when they do that they run multiple scenarios of types of projects that they might expect to see, so they can see how that plays out. Because when you ran a public transit project through Decision Lens for the 10-year plan, it didn't work. So that's just my suggestion, that they really want to look at that closely and test it to see if the results are what they were hoping to get.
And that's the beauty, is you can run multiple.
Exactly.
The other thing I think is a little easier for us is that, you know, the 10-year plan, you are looking at the gamut of transportation.
Right.
We're going to be focusing in on really biking and walking, you know, predominantly,
Which is great.
alternative transportation. So I think that you're right, but I think we'll focus in. And those are good comments, because we have not used Decision Lens for any other program. So it's a little bit of a trial as well. And, you know, our hope is that it's going. We've done a few test runs, you know, internally, and it looks good. It looks like it, you know, the one that I did, it was funny, is we had 5 people with 5 opinions, and we're all very strong-minded people, and at the end, we all went, yeah, that makes sense to all of us. So that gave us a lot of hope that this is the right way to go. And again, when we go to the CMAC round, which is more people you're interested in, same thing, that it'll be geared towards transit and those elements as well. All right, so the advisory committee is actually, it's not draft anymore. I wish I'd taken the draft off. We actually have sent letters out. These are the organizations that we have targeted, and I'm starting to get the responses back from them. But we're looking at a 9-member committee, and staff, we're not actually members, but there's going to be staff that's going to guide the whole process. Myself, probably John Corrigan, with his Safe Routes experience. We're going to be shepherding this project along, this group. Rail and transit, we are going to have a few internal people as well. We have a bike and ped section, so they're instrumental. But if you look at this group, what we really did is we looked at who are the stakeholders. So we're trying to get the health folks, the DES, the air quality people, the transit, the rail, the bicycle. You know, the one that I hope we get somebody from is the Dartmouth-Hitchcock, the Safe Kids program. So, you know, we really, and you know, a lot of what we're doing is to encourage the new user. It's not, you know, a lot of it is an existing need, but I think we're trying to cultivate new users. So the more we can get kids out there, I think the whole Safe Routes model, it's not going to go away. We're going to continue to encourage this through the capital. Yeah.
So on the old committee, the RPC and the MPO membership rotated on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that stays with us, so that each of the RPCs and the MPOs will have an opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's, you know, Bill Watson is more of a person you should voice that as well, but, you know, you have to have some continuity, so I would say, yeah, after each round, then there would be maybe a swap of
Yeah,
those.
that would be great.
Yeah.
Very much appreciated.
Okay, so the application process will be very similar to TE program. You know, the applications will be developed because the criteria will have to be clearly defined in the application. And as the RPC works with the applicants, you know, they really have to focus in on making sure they're answering that criteria, because that's how they're going to be scored. So if you know, if you can't determine from your response that you meet the criteria, you're probably not going to score as well. So that's very important. They're going to be starting to be developed very soon. And then if you've been through the last round of TE, we're going to always follow this model. We're going to ask for a letter of interest from anyone that wants to apply. And that gives us at least a baseline of how many people are interested regionally. So where population is very important. If I don't get any letters, say from, it's not going to happen, let's say I got nothing from the 200,000 and over, I'd probably be on the phone with the planning commission saying, you know, you need to draw up some for us. My assumption is we're going to have way more than we can possibly find. That's usually what happens. But then all these come into us, and then we're going to invite everybody that submitted this letter to a 2-hour, it's not a training session, it's more of an informational meeting, mandatory, that you've got to come to this. And what we're going to do, spend a couple hours, and the question has come up, if I'm LPA certified, do I have to come to this meeting? And yes, you do. You have to come. It's not going to be training, it's going to be a sit down, this is what the TAP program is, this is what we're going to require of you, you know, this is how you're going to be scored. It's more of a, you know, it's two things. One is to give them the latest and greatest info, and two, are you really committed? If you're not committed enough to come to a 2-hour meeting, you're probably not committed enough to, you know, to do a project. So we need that level. And then that really gets important is then we open up the applications. If you haven't fulfilled those two, you cannot apply. You can't call us up, say, I'm sorry, I didn't do either one, I really want this project. Well, sorry, you know, you need to fulfill those two requirements. And what happened was, and why we think it's a very good thing, is for the last TE round we had, I think I had like 110 letters of interest. Maybe 75 people showed up to my training, and we ended up with about 45 or 50 applications. So the people who really weren't ready, they realized it. The people who said, wow, this really isn't a TE project at all, this is a 10-year plan project, you know, they kind of filtered them out versus them wasting all that time, putting in their app. We waste all of our time scoring them only to realize they're just not, it just doesn't fit. So I think that is a very important 3-step process that we do that. We'll be looking to the planning commissions to really help us to get the word out. You know, we're gonna try to hold these meetings around the state. You know, maybe, you know, so there's not as burdensome for some people. You know, we'll hold maybe 4 different select locations. Shouldn't really be. It is hard to say. I don't even know if I'm applying and I got to go to this training, but that is something we really want to see. Okay, the role of the regional planning commissions, I think, would be very similar. Is the apps will come into regional planning commissions and the DOT, so they'll have to submit 2 applications. The regional planning commissions will, I would assume, you know, they'll check them over, they'll rank them. And I think a lot of the planning commissions are saying, you know, you should be, you know, you need to give us your criteria. So we have the same criteria you guys are going to use. And you guys will score your projects as well. Then those will all come into us. I also think, you know, the regional planning commissions will be helping to guide the applicants to look at, you know, are these eligible? You saw what we're saying, you know, we want to filter out certain eligible activities, so you provide that guidance to them. And in the end, you know, we'll have a submission date And all the applications will be submitted to DOT. The RPCs will give us their ranking orders as well.
So, what if we want to do a refined decision-making process where we have a set of criteria for certain types? Can we send that into you, or are we going to have to use it?
Well, we were gonna use the criteria we set. So you
All
could
of
do
those
any,
together?
you could score yours any way you want. But we wouldn't modify anything that we have done. That committee will set the criteria that they will use, because that applications will already be set. So we wouldn't modify
So
those.
if we wanted to further refine it in the way that Brad was talking about, we could.
For your own right?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, yeah. You don't even have to use it. I mean, you can do anything you want to do your side of things.
What, I'm a little confused with how that would play in, say, they rank 1 to 10 in SRPC, then it goes to DOT and they use the decision lens, and they get,
But
different
what I'm
rankings,
saying
that's
is
what
that-
you use,
But
right?
if a criteria, if one of our criteria said regional ranking,
Okay.
Number 1
That's
might
where-
get 10 points,
I got
number
you.
10 might
That's
get
where-
1 point.
Okay,
So-
that's where it's valuable, it
Right.
was weighted based on those numbers.
And that's why I got a big draft stamp on this, because we don't know yet. But you will know, because you'll know what our criteria is prior to the application. So, if that is one of our criterias, then that makes sense that you would want to determine your number 1 project as best you can, which I think you would anyway. You would want your first pick, I would think. So,
The last thing that Mark did before he left was develop the whole, he used the theory papers for decision lines to develop that whole process on Excel. So that was the very last thing that he did in his last week. So.
and that's going to be a little different change too, is that my understanding is our submissions have to be electronic, so that it can't be fed directly in. So it'll be a little bit of a different than the old. Okay, so the scoring process. So the scoring committee will be created. It's very vague at this point. I think we'll probably be looking maybe to that other committee, the advisory committee, to look at that as well. One thing we did say is that there will be a few members from the advisory committee will be on the scoring committee, so there'll be a little bit of a knowledge base there. But you don't, what I've heard is that you don't want the committee that develops the criteria to solely be the scorers. That it's very good to have independent scorers come in. So if you look at this, we're looking for, what I'm looking for is some higher level, someone who maybe does management, somebody who does operations, somebody who does design, sort of a very global look at all facets of projects to be on the scoring committee. We have not actually recruited membership to this committee yet. It's still very draft. I'm not sure how many members, we don't want too many members, so we're still working through that. Just to know that there will be an independent committee. The role of this committee, though, will be very specific to, you're going to get these, you're going to score them, you're going to rank them, and that's it. The first committee that I talked about, they're going to be the standing committee. So if any issues come up, we tap, that's the committee that I will have at my disposal to go to, just like we have the TV. And then as we get into sliding into the next round, they'll be back together, reevaluate how do things work. And one thing that we didn't do, which we should have done, is we'll have a minimum of annual meetings to give an update. Maybe the committee says we want them every 6 months, but to sit down and say, we picked 20 projects, out of that 20, 5 are in design, 10 are, just to keep them informed so that we don't lose track of things and have, like we do now, projects that are, going on 10 years old and still out there. I think it's very important that we move forward.
So on the 2 members from the advisory committee, I think seeing everyone else is from DOT, I think it would be really good to have other state agency representatives, particularly in the areas of health and recreation, sort of the active transportation.
Those aren't DOT, those are just, I mean, the environmental representative could come from DES. A planning representative doesn't necessarily have to be your planning. It's very generic right now.
Yeah, I just want to say that I think the state agents, I've been on these committees, review committees for a long time, and the state agency staff have done a great job of being neutral and objective, of my experience. So,
What I don't see is local representation. I think you need somebody from a municipality who's in the trenches and doing the projects and
Yep.
the process and understand how local government works. I think that's a critical piece. I don't see any local municipal representation at all in the two communities.
That's a good, And actually, I want to back up, because you guys are asking for the question, you're the best group yet, so that's good. But I breezed by one important element that I want to go back to. Process. Right here, so we're still on scoring process. One thing that we did with the TE program, and it really it kind of came out of Bill Cass, just threw it out there and it looked great, is that we go below the line. We've always drawn a line and said, here we go. Here's all the projects, money ran out, draw a line, and walk away. Now, like the last TE round, Bill Cass said, let's keep that line going, maybe 4 or 5 projects deep, and say they're unfunded but approved. And we did that. And what happened was, there's always an attrition. There's always, no matter how hard they try, there's a project or two that just doesn't make it. It says, we're done. In the past, we're like, great, we have, all this extra money, but we can't do anything with it because, we have to go through another process. So by selecting them, gone through the competitive process, we can then offer them the money. And with the TE program, we're funding 3 out of the 5 projects below the line. Brookline is one, they're almost done. They're actually jumped ahead of all the other projects, and they're almost completed. So it worked out very well. So we want to continue that process. I don't think you're going to see every project funded. That's just reality. So go down deeper, and then if funds come up, if Lee gives me a lot more money, I can then fund these projects without going through another round. So, yeah.
Tom, on that same point, I think you noted that you're going to be setting up milestones for applicants to get started on their approved project. I think there should be some process that if a applicant misses first milestone and maybe has some encouragement, you're late. After a while, these projects that just aren't going to get off the ground get called out. In fairness to some of the other people, they may be great projects. They might be ahead of their time. Politics might have changed locally, but we've had this historic problem of projects kind of just sitting forever. Right? So I really encourage you to use those milestones effectively to call out some of the projects that aren't quite ready.
And I don't have a slide for it, but that goes to my timeline is we're trying to be very aggressive. So we're looking to get the applications process done over the summer. We're looking to score them over the fall to midwinter and get them into the STIP in the January amendment, which means that by March or April, all the projects that are selected for can become active. And then I would be looking for these projects to be constructed within 2 to 3 years. So the clock really will start ticking. As soon as Linda comes back and says, your projects are good, they cleared the STIP, they're going to have 90 days to start. If they don't start within those 90 days, then yeah, they're going to have a conversation to say, what is wrong? What is delaying you from starting? And some valid, and there's very valid reasons. We're not going to be black and white and just throw you out, but if if we don't think it's a good decision, it's, well, maybe you're not ready. Maybe you're going to reapply. So, and as we move forward, in the past we have, let's say you run into a right-of-way issue, like, oh my God, you were promised an easement and they just got divorced and they sold their house, and before you know, 5 years have gone by. We're going to say, look, we'll give you maybe 6 months or something to address this issue, and then it's time to either totally change the scope or shut it down. We're going to be less flexible in some regards, but because we have the extra projects, it's like, there's some good projects that are ready to go. So that's going to be the message is, you need to be ready to go. You need to be committed to getting your project built. The other thing we're hoping for, as long as we say, I don't know what the new bill will be, but we're assuming we're going to have funds continuing, we're going to get more onto a regular cycle. So it's not as big a deal to say, we're going to have to shut you down, but you're going to be applying again in like a year and a half, because we're going to have a round every 2 years or every 3 years. Whereas now, I think everyone's going, it's been since 2009. It's a long time to wait, so we don't want to give up our money. But that is going to be, we are going to be very rigid when it comes to milestones. And we're also they're not impossible to meet. We're trying to be as flexible as possible. I've had a couple projects that have proven to me, as long as the town manager stays on top of it, as long as the consultant is a reasonably good consultant, these projects have no difficulties meeting a 2 to 3 year cycle from beginning to final completion. So that's all for slides. So that's yep, Steve.
Sorry, I missed the first 2 slides, but you said $5 million over 2 years.
Yep.
Is that before the trails set aside or after?
That's after the $7.5 million.
Okay.
And the $5 million, it may not be 5 because we never want to promise out the entire portion. Budgets, projects go up. We can't anticipate what contractors are going to bid. So we try to back down a little bit. So maybe it's 4.8 million, maybe it's 4.7. We haven't determined what that funding level is going to be. But the other thing too is we might have, if we get an apportionment for fiscal 15, we're going to have some more money. So, right now we don't know what the future is for 15. So we don't even know what 14 is.
Thanks, Tom. Did the federal government come up with the membership to the TAP committee, or did
No,
DOT?
no, it's an interim.
So this is a draft, so this can't change the membership.
Well, no, it's already been.
It's already established.
Yeah, if you have any comments, though, I'm glad to take them. As far as, you see anything we're missing, or?
Yeah, I believe that we should have elected representation on every single one of these. That's my.
What do you mean by elected?
I believe elected people should be on these boards, not appointed people.
What do you mean by elected? Like,
Meaning local representation.
it's interesting that you say that, though, because our experience is the TE committee had a very big elected. We had Senate, we had House, we had governor, we had executive council. I don't think we got the best projects. We got what project they did the most for them in their district, but to look at spreading the money statewide on what we consider probably, hopefully the best projects, I don't think was a great. I don't think that worked very well. That was one of our critiques. Executive council also really doesn't want much to do with it. They have said they would rather have us, do your process, then come back and tell us these are what we selected. You take your comments back, definitely. But we also have a high turnover we found with elected officials. And we also found that, I hate to say it, the commitment wasn't really there. Their attendances weren't great at our meetings. Haven't attended any meeting, then they walk in and go, oh, here are my scores. you know, you haven't seen anything, you haven't seen the action, you haven't heard the presentations, but you gave me all your scores. So,
We get the government we deserve.
you know, right. Yeah, go ahead.
I guess another way to kind of tie into that would be, you know, where there are multiple regional planning commission representatives. I would think that the leadership team of the RPCs could actually select who represented the RPCs on the committee.
That might have been done. The two names for those two positions came from Bill Watson. So, I'm not sure how
We
it was.
didn't have a discussion.
I think it can definitely, moving forward, I think, you know, I would give your concerns to Bill Watson, if you have any.
I mean, there's really also a big city orientation with the composition of the two regional planning commissions and the most urban regions in the state, and, you know, I take exception.
One thing to
And
note.
I think Cynthia's idea of rotating it so that everybody has an opportunity to participate, I think is a clearer way to approach it, rather than just designate two planning commissions arbitrarily.
And one thing to note, it is the legislation, and Lee can probably help me with this, but the over 200,000 actually goes to the planning commission. But they can decide, they can let us distribute the funds, but really Nashua is really the big, you know, receiver of that as well. So I think they were selected first,
That's the problem,
you know.
resources
So that was
are
my original-
distributed fairly.
That was my original question. So I understand CAP, and I understand that the over 200,000 is set aside for Nashua. So they have communities in their region that are under 5,000. So do they fit in both categories? I don't understand how that works.
And as long as they're, you know, my indication is we're gonna do the whole thing. So they're not gonna get their 600,000 and then develop their own system. And, you know, my understanding right now is we will do the selection. So just like anything, I mean, Nashville could get 5 projects that could get done, just like, you know, Concord could get multiple projects, or, you know, New York could get multiple projects, that we'll look at how they rank. You know, the #1 ranking is Nashville. Say, okay, you know, how much is the project? It's 500,000. Okay, boom, now there's 100,000 left. What's the next project? You know, moving down the line, say the next project is in Nashville. Say, okay, 100,000 comes out of that, now 400, 500 comes out of that, flexible anywhere. You know, we'll keep moving the funds around as we go through the list.
I understand what you're doing, and I know that it's how you did the scoring and selection has worked with the CMAC and the last round, but the map 21 talks about the set aside for the over 200,000, and I understand that as well, and I respect why that's being done. I just don't understand the mechanics of how you would meet these two. It seems like the process doesn't work with what map 21 says, and that's just my concern to have more discussion about that. Thank you.
And it's based on, that 200,000 is a regional designation, but you could have a community with 2,000 people that wants to go after one of these projects, and which pot do they fall in? That's where you
Yeah,
should.
Well, there's a map that it's the census map, right, Lee?
Yeah, the urbanized areas are set by the 2010 census. There's been we've gone through a little smoothing process for the boundaries, which are now set. So the TAP requires that those 200,000 plus areas that they have to have their own competitive process for selecting these projects. So their process, similar to what you guys will be doing, I mean, everybody's going to have their own kind of competitive process at the RPC level anyway with what the program that Tom's proposed. But that is a specific requirement in the law that the discusses those areas having their own competitive processes to select projects,
So
so.
I understand that they can defer though to this DOT.
Yeah, and I think, actually, I think Bill Watson's he's working on scheduling a meeting to talk about some of these issues.
So my understanding is that Nashua would have that amount, whatever it was.
What about Manchester though? Manchester must fall into that category.
It didn't.
Well, it gets-
no.
No.
But it gets tricky because it does spill out into Rockingham, it spills out into Southern. So it's not just, Nashua isn't
Right.
solely in
Right,
those.
but they're the responsible MPO one, so.
I think those discussions are great. They're probably not for today. I think maybe we won't have the 600. My understanding still is that we're going to look at all of them. Maybe that's differently, maybe I'm wrong. But I don't think we're in a position to say to Nashua, you can't apply for TAP funds because you get this. Because they have, 600,000 out of, 5 million. So I don't know how that would work.
The any area fund is just that, it's any area.
But it's all area-based, it's not community boundary-based for those designations, those population designations.
Correct.
Okay, that's where I was a little.
What do you mean by that? As far as,
Well, Nashua, you're saying Nashua isn't just the city of Nashua. Nashua encompasses communities around it, some of those communities which may be very small. And they might think that they were under 5,000. But they're really technically not because they're in the Nashua area.
right, but the map shows that
Yeah.
if you might have communities that are in the National Regional Planning Commission that aren't in that boundary.
Yes.
That's
Right.
true too.
And
Yeah.
I think what we've determined is if it's in the town, that's what the town is, right? If the boundary goes.
That's right.
Because they don't totally encompass a town either.
Right.
You could have a little fringe area here. And the 5 to 200,000 is the same thing. There's pockets, booms, like splatterings all over the map. We're just going to look at those towns and say, okay, here's the cluster of towns that can apply.
Those urban area boundaries, as they were originally set up from the census, actually, in some cases, the boundary didn't extend to the intersection, for example. The boundary would bisect the roadway width. So one of the things that DOT did is kind of smoothed out those boundaries to the intersections to cover the full roadway width. So in that respect, it'll be a little more easy to figure out where a project is located.
So that map, getting that out, I would say is really important because.
We've been waiting. I think it's finalized.
It is
now?
finalized.
Okay, so last I checked, the GIS section was still
No,
waiting for your approval.
We've approved the
The other
adjustment.
thing too is just realize, please, this is draft as well. We're working through this. Maybe Bill Watson's on a different course now with those funds, but irregardless, we're going to have some pot of money, and it's going to go through this process for the state and the local. So if you look at it, I guess the worst case is subtract 600,000 from that total, and that's what the state would be dealing with.
And thank you so much for coming, and we really appreciate it. And our questions might be rather pointed or whatever, but we really want to help support this and get clarification so that we can have good applications.
I wish you had gotten scheduled first. You asked more questions than all the other 4 meetings.
Okay, any more questions? We need to move on. Any more questions? Well, thanks, Tom. I appreciate your presentation. Okay, we move on. We need to dispose of the minutes from the last meeting. Anybody have any suggestions for improving them or correcting them? Okay, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Okay. Okay, all in favor of the motion to approve the minutes? Okay, good.
Sue Nays abstains.
You're
Any
abstaining.
abstentions?
Two.
Two abstentions, okay.
I got it.
And the next is the amendment to the prospectus, and I think, Cynthia, you're gonna.
All right, so we have a public notice out. We had a request through the interagency coordination meeting from Federal Highways and Federal Transit to reconsider our length of period for our public review. And so right now we have a 30-day public comment period on the changes to our prospectus that began on April 11th and it continues through May 15th. And our public hearing is scheduled for Friday, May 16th at 9 a.m. here in this room. And the policy committee will, after the public hearing, will consider the update to the prospectus. So the change to the document is strictly limited to adjusting the allowable length of public comment periods for proposed transportation improvement programs, the TIP amendments. And so if you look on page 41 of the prospectus, under section 7.51, public notice and public hearing on amended plans and TIP, the entirety of the change to the prospectus is to say a comment period of 10/30 days beginning from the date of the hearing notice shall be provided, during which comments may be submitted for consideration. So prior to that, the language read a comment period of 30 days. So this now provides more flexibility for processing, and so it would run 10 through 30 days. And this is the second or third time that this topic has come up in the last 5 to 10 years at the interagency with Federal Highways and DOT, looking at ways and means to get projects more expeditiously processed through so that advertising schedules and construction can be met. So is there anything else that Linda or Lee would like to add?
Well, I think it's beneficial to have a shorter period because I work with the amendment side of project managers and always, in a rush to get the money. If they need the money and, it's halfway between amendments, they have to wait even longer. So they're constantly waiting. DOT has a 30-day public notice on our website, so I just encourage the 10-day to 30-day.
So are you saying with that you would keep your 30-day?
The 30-day is on the DOT website, I believe, yes. But we have, all the MPOs are doing the shorter period because we put it out, I believe, that we keep ours at 30 days.
All right. So are there any recommendations, comments to bring forward to the policy committee in regards to this?
So you mentioned the other day at our meeting about incorporating language that we and Wildcat Transit need. Is that language that needs to be incorporated into the prospectus, or is that outside of the prospectus in the public comment?
It would be for us, no, it would be for us to incorporate, my understanding, and I would like some guidance from Federal Transit on this. What my understanding is, in our public notices, we have to clarify where the public notice meets policies or practices addressed in our adopted public participation plan.
Okay.
So I talked to Bev about that, Steve. And I was completely unaware of that until I saw that. So.
We need a recommendation for.
Yes,
Oh,
we
go
do.
ahead, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Cynthia? During the 30-day period, do we get a lot of public comment on those changes?
Usually the comments that we get are from the people at the TAC committee or at the policy committee. We do occasionally get comments from other people who have a project that may be impacted by, or they have concerns about the process for their particular project at that time. So if we do get project comments, they're usually about a specific project.
Having the flexibility to have a shorter period to save time during projects is a good idea, but there has to be a renewed effort on really getting more comments, valid from the public, not just the people within the organizations. So I know we're trying to do that, and I know it's very hard to get the public involved in anything, but it would be good to shrink it down and have that flexibility, but we have to have more public participation.
So,
which I know you agree with.
in my understanding, the idea here is to limit or have the flexibility to limit public comment period. Is that basically what we're being asked to recommend?
The time period for, yes.
So we want to give the public less time to comment on how these projects are done.
Yes.
Amendments, though, just amendments, right?
Yes.
Unamended plans
It's
and
just the
TIFs.
first foothold in the amendments.
Yeah, Steve?
Well, I think what's important.
Excuse me, let me just clarify, section 7.51 is public notice and public hearings on amended plans and our transportation improvement program. So the MPO shall schedule a public hearing on any amendment to the plan or the TIP which is proposed. So that would be amendments and the TIP in and of itself, in its entirety.
So we're saying limit public comment.
Randall.
So how do we determine whether or not we choose something on the spectrum of days? This one warrants 10, this one warrants 30. How does that work? And I apologize because I've not read the amended prospectus.
If the only amendment is to add 10 dash to third, in front of 30, that's it. So how to determine, I think that usually with the 30-day, the interagency committee, the coordination committee meets once a month in the second week on a second Thursday. And at that time, they talk about processing and how the monthly minors and the major amendments are moving forward. And then at that point in time, people at the MPO level and the state start talking about constraints they might have on meeting dates, and then DOT and Federal Highways talks about need for advertising and construction seasons. Am I presenting that accurately?
Yeah, I think so.
And Paul, I'm
so-
sorry, Paul is also there.
So you would have the MPO would still have the flexibility if you thought there was a project change in a particular TIP amendment that was controversial, or for whatever reason you felt like you wanted to have the extended public comment period. It still would allow for that to happen. The process would still allow for that to happen. But what you have now is a little more flexibility to move things along a little more quickly, again, based occasionally on needs that arise related to advertising, construction schedules for projects. So yes, those things are discussed during the interagency meetings that occur monthly, and there's
Somebody else has that
consensus
one to
reached
speak?
on.
Yeah, Steve?
I'd just like to support the amendment as an applicant has had projects that have kind of gotten hung up on these 30-day requirements, that having the MPO have the 10 dash so they have some flexibility is always a good thing. I'm sure that if, as Lee's saying, if the MPO technical or policy group ever thought that something was significant or controversial enough that it needed the full 30 days, we have the authority to take the full 30 days. But we're just building in some flexibility here. I think it's a very good idea, and I would support it.
I would support it if there was more clarification on how the 10 to 30 was determined. So I think we should not do this. I agree with Brad that it's too vague, that there's no clarity as to what's going to drive the 10 to 30. So I would actually make a motion not to recommend the amendment.
Motion on the floor? Second.
I'll second.
Motion is not to recommend. Okay. Discussion on that?
Yeah, I think I need to go with that right now. I like the flexibility, but I'm not sure who decides. The agency coordination committee, is that what you said? The interagency. That's who would decide. And then you had mentioned the TAC and MPO would, but would we be privy to that conversation? How would we know?
Staff would present to you.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
about our
Yeah.
amendment.
Right.
It's not about the state's, it's about ours. The state will still have their, this is about our project.
Yeah, and then the second one, maybe I could be convinced on that, but I just didn't see anything between 10 days as compared to 30 days. Does anyone do a 10-day comment period? And does that affect any stats or data say, 30-day comment period, on average, you get X, amount of comments, as for the 10 days, does it limit the public participation? Because I agree with him that, we want more, we get one, and we may get one after, whether it's 10 days or 30 days. I just don't know. I'm just not comfortable yet knowing. I don't think I have enough information to support it at this time.
Yeah, I can't support it either, and I believe you could get support if you could show that there was, you're slammed with comments, you're slammed with it, and the public participation system is working perfectly fine. Then you might have the ability to do that, but not now.
Any more discussion on you?
So, I'm sorry, I need some clarification on the process between the interagency deciding that that there needs to be an amendment, and why the timing of a shortened public comment period would be. I just don't. I don't understand the mechanics of it.
So, well, at the interagencies, we present all the projects in the amendments, and then all the MPOs have either 10 to 30-day public comment period. And certain MPOs, it would take longer if they, have meetings that they have to wait for, certain meetings. So the amendment process is taking quite a long time when we're waiting 30 days. Whereas if we had the option of 10 to 30, some projects that, were high priority and needed to get out, and if it was in your area, you could see it, and Stratford could decide, we want 10 days for this because we want it to move, then, it could be 10 to 30 days. I don't know if I answered your
I mean, there's a lot of projects that we would have on a STIP amendment that they're just changes in dollar figures based on the federal allocation. It's not like the federal government gave us more or less. It's not debatable. So I can see how that could be advantageous. But at the same time, I guess I'm just unclear how 20 fewer days buys us that much more time. So you're saying after the interagency, the local RPCs put out public notice, and if they can have flexibility of a 10 to 30 day, then that public notice period might be able to be closed within the time frame of an upcoming meeting, which then means you don't have to wait for the next meeting?
Yes.
Sometimes that
Yes.
happens, yes.
So it's not really 30, you're talking it would be 45, 50, really,
Well,
because
yeah,
of the
we-
meeting schedules.
It seems,
Yeah, we've had some where we approved and it was 3 or 4 months later that
Yeah.
the STIP amendment was approved.
That's
yeah, it
pretty
takes,
regular.
it takes,
Yeah.
yeah, 3 or 4
Are we
months.
talking about administrative type things like the extension of a grant time frame or changing the dollar figures and moving it to the next year? Are we talking about programmatic type? If we talk about project changes, so for instance, in Newmarket, we just changed the scope of our project from a pedestrian bridge to a pedestrian improvement project. Are you talking about that kind of a change?
Yes,
Would
that
have
would
to
be an amendment.
Okay.
a scope
Can
change
I
in
say
the
that
amendment.
these projects are vetted at the local level, and if there's going to be a change, it really should be at the local level that you have these discussions, that you bring the public into the process. I just think it's really kind of just a, excuse me, but a bureaucratic requirement. And I think there needs to be some mechanism to move projects forward in a more expeditious manner. And I think having some flexibility between from 30 days to 10 days really can make a difference when you're trying to get a project done. You have a very limited time frame to do so. So I would I would not agree with the motion that's on the floor.
Any more comment?
Yeah,
Yeah,
just,
Dave.
I mean, I'm just not at a point, you know, that, at this point, I just don't have enough information. I don't want to beat the horse, but is there, this is it? This is the meeting we have to send? I mean, it's not like we can wait until the next meeting? Okay.
What, yeah.
Policy can vote on this without a TAC recommendation, right?
Yeah.
Right. I really think the makeup of the policy committee really should send some kind of recommendation one way or another, because a lot of them are late, they really look to us for a recommendation.
Are you ready to vote? First of all, let's read the motion.
I just have one more question.
Okay, the motion is to not recommend. Yeah.
I still have discussion questions.
Okay, good.
I just wanted to ask her, I guess one of my concerns would be if somebody wants to amend their project, that where is the assurance that at the local level there is enough discussion about it? I mean, because
You have to go to in my community, you have to go to the town council to have a resolution passed. You have a first reading, it's presented in a public forum. You have a second reading 3 weeks later, it's presented in a public forum. It's on the agenda, and anybody who is interested in the project, who has a concern about it, can come forward and present their commentary to the municipality. And since we're managing these projects, it should be controlled at the local level and not at the state level. I guess that's my feeling. That, this is kind of an action that's taken away from the authority of the communities to do their projects.
Well,
And so I just, and some of these things are are administrative.
Okay,
Changing the dollar amount to accommodate, a cost overrun, something like that. And I think that absolutely you need as much flexibility, because we have our own local process that assures that we have public
right, but I have another
participation.
question in regards to this, because I
I
asked
just
this
think it's
before.
overkill, I guess.
Is it just amendments, and that's what Chris is saying, it's not just amendments. If it was just amendments, it's not a big deal, but if we're talking the whole shebang, it makes a big difference.
It says amendments and this day.
Yeah.
Any
We
more
just get
comments?
amended at the same time.
Yeah, but it was talking about the initial.
Are you ready to vote, or do we want any more comment? Go ahead.
Just by taking a reading from everybody here, it doesn't seem like we're sure. It seems very quick to make any decision at all. I mean, I think our policy recommendations to policy committee should be well thought out. And I'm hearing a lot of, I don't know, I'm not sure, does it really? I'm hearing negatives. I'm not saying no or yes. I'm saying we need more information, we need more discussion.
Well, the motion on the floor says no. Motion on the floor says recommend against.
Right. I'm at the point where I would abstain because I don't have enough information.
Everybody ready to make a decision? Okay.
We're just
All-
we're just
all in-
voting on the motion,
We're
correct?
voting on the motion. All in favor of the motion?
And that's in favor of
Favor of the
30.
amendment.
This is in favor.
No, it's all, the
Yeah,
amendment.
in favor of the motion. Not recommend.
Yeah, not to, the motion not to recommend. All in favor of the motion not to recommend, is that,
Yes.
okay. Okay? The other side?
Against the motion.
Yeah.
Opposed.
Opposed to the
Opposed, opposed to the motion. Opposed to the motion. Four. Abstentions? 3 abstentions.
Someone needs to make a motion to table.
What are 3 in favor of?
These are the people that are against the motion.
Wouldn't the abstentions would go with the prevailing vote? So then it would carry. not a good decision.
So, motion carries. Send it to the policy.
So, I'm sorry, I can't see. So
What's
there
the
were
other?
four
4 against the motion of not recommending,
and 4 in favor, 4 approving?
4 approving, no, there were 3 approving,
Okay.
not recommending. There were 4 against not recommending and 3 abstentions.
So
And
the
so-
motion failed.
No, the motion passes because the
Motion passed.
abstentions go with the prevailing vote, the 11.
So we're going to
Yeah,
recommend.
check
I've never heard of
That
that.
doesn't
Well, we have to check our bylaws. I mean,
I've never heard of
The
that.
motion-
if that's Robert's rules, if we are governed by them and it's
Yeah.
not
Well, how
specific
would
in
it
our
say?
bylaws.
So,
There
motion
were
not
3
recommended.
people
We have our own
that
rules.
were for
Why would you
not
change?
recommending.
That's what the
4 were
upper-
against not recommending.
I
I'm
don't
pretty sure that's how it
Okay,
works.
so the motion failed.
But it just is not.
That means
One vote.
still open. The motion failed, that means it's still open, right?
That's the way I,
The motion.
motion failed.
So that
Yeah.
means you're not recommending because of the policy.
Yeah.
We don't have a
We
recommendation.
don't, we do not have a recommendation at this point.
Correct.
That's-
All right,
that's
but
it.
you have a lot of comments.
So what's the next move?
Shouldn't there be a motion to ask for more information, or how do you?
Clarify the,
I mean, it sounds like we all agree we need more information on
Okay,
how the
here,
whole
here's-
process.
I'll make a motion that we table this until we get more information about the item.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion's made and seconded to table the issue until we get more information?
It's never going to come back,
I have a question.
Never gonna,
No.
time is,
Yeah,
Yeah.
time is.
Yeah, talk about it.
so, yeah, how critical is this?
Mark and Dan attended these meetings, so I'm dependent on the people that are there regularly.
How critical is the decision you're making, or
By this
tentative?
MPO. No, timeline decision. That's-
Well, this is the only MPO that waits 30 days.
I wish we had heard that, because
No,
that,
I-
I think, is more, very germane to the issue.
It's the only NPO that has the 30 days, is that what you said?
An amendment can just be adding a phase, a description change, increase in funds.
and I don't think anyone had a problem with the amendment. It's just that the way it's written, it's not just amendments. That's the problem I had. If it was clear that it was only amendments, no issue.
And it doesn't matter what the other RPCs are doing.
No.
You get a second? What's the question?
Where do we stand? I'm confused myself right
I
now.
thought we need to move the question to
Motion
table.
to
You have
table.
table in a second.
Somebody seconded.
Second?
No discussion.
I just have a question,
No
that we
discussion.
understand what tabling means. So,
Relevant to
as I understand, if we table it, if this item will still be a vote on the policy agenda. So simply, they will vote on it without a recommendation from the technical committee. That's
Well,
what-
they may not, right?
Well, they may
I mean,
not.
they could table it.
I
I
guess
mean-
they could.
That's,
And it could come back next month.
It does say here that changes to the document are limited to adjusting the allowable length of public comment periods for proposed amendments. So what this would mean is we would have to go in here and clarify this. So right now, what Mark did was write a comment period of 10 to 30 days. So he's applying it to both. This says only amendments. So I could change, so we could move forward with, I change our language here, which means we have to go, I don't know whether, the policy committee would have to decide whether these were substantive changes, so.
I'd like to withdraw my motion because we've had a lot of discussion on a motion to table, which you're not supposed to have a discussion on. So I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Did you have a couple of comments?
I was going to say, can the TAP make a motion, make a recommendation to the MPO that the 10 to 20 day period apply only to amendments, but that the tip itself will still require 30 days.
I'll second that motion.
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
that's what we're doing.
Okay, we
So
got,
who made the motion?
yeah, motion and second, second.
Oh, yeah, that was a motion.
And Chris made the second.
Can you very quickly just repeat
We
the
have a
motion?
motion on the floor?
Repeat the motion, I didn't hear it, the discussion.
The recommendation to the MPO,
Yeah.
the tax recommendation will be that the 10 to 30-day comment period be adopted for amendments only, but that a 30-day period will still be required for a TIP itself.
Are you guys,
Everybody
I
understand the
would support
motion?
that.
Discussion on the motion? Ready to vote?
Yep.
All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Opposed? Opposed?
You got your amendments in 10 days.
No.
Voting no.
We didn't get to abstention yet. Opposed? Opposed? One?
No, I'm not opposed.
One, okay, abstention. No abstention, okay.
What was one? Why you,
Is,
He wants it.
One.
Chip, I'm just curious,
Wants it all.
when do you vote on that? Do you vote on that with, at the same time as the amendment, so it would be,
Yeah, how do you, I don't get it. I mean, you,
Amendments
is
to the
the
TIP.
tip would be going by the change of the amendment, wouldn't it?
In my mind, every tip is approved as an amendment.
Is that how it works?
Can I ask a question? Is the distinction here that the updated tip, is that what we're talking about? That would still have the 30-day comment period? The new tip that comes around every 2 years with a new 10-year plan cycle, is that?
That's what I was referring to.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, so
yeah,
that would
yeah,
be different,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Anything with the
All right, I
amendment
didn't
is
know.
fine. It's the-
Because the
New-
amendment would change the tip.
Everybody happy with the vote?
That's fine.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, thank goodness, right. Let's see, we still have some discussion items here, I think. Cynthia, did you have something to say?
I do, just really briefly. I'd like people to know that on April 23rd, all of the executive directors of MPOs received planning emphasis area from the deputy directors of federal highways and federal transit. And the planning emphasis area for our upcoming federal fiscal year, which would be our fiscal year, a portion of our fiscal year 2015. So the first area looks at MAP 21 implementation, and they want us to focus on the transition to performance-based planning and programming. And the second area they want us to look at is models of regional planning cooperation, promoting cooperation and coordination across MPO and state boundaries. And so they talk about development of joint planning products and working with our DOTs and our operators of public transportation on activities such as data collection, data storage and analysis, and analytical tools. And I just wanted to let people know that the whole area that Greg is working on in the SAIDs, which he's going to give you a short update on, would qualify for this area. And also we're working on a similar area with coastal stewards, which starts to look into the environmental aspects and climate change. And the third area they want us to look at is ladders of opportunities in providing access to essential services, identifying transportation connectivity gaps to essential services such as housing, employment, healthcare, schools, education, and recreation. So this is also dependent upon us identifying performance measures and analytical methods. So all of the work that Greg's been working on and in association with T-Squared and DOT and the work we do with Google Transit, with our transit providers, this is all aligned with what the planning emphasis areas are. So we lucked out. We happened to choose the areas to focus on that are up and coming for the next federal fiscal year. So that's good for us. Also, Last time that we did a reauthorization, there was a leaked reauthorization bill from USDOT, and this time we got the Grow America reauthorization that was issued this week from the Secretary's offices, Secretary Fox, and so I know Brad's sitting over there with a copy of the fact sheet on transit, but I have a copy and you can get it on the website. Go to the Grow America website, and you can find access on the language, a summary of the significant changes in sections that they're looking at, and then also all of the fact sheets. I went through these last night and we're very much on track. A lot of work to do, but it's similar to where we were going anyways. And the last thing in this regards is I'm on the technical committee for the Association of MPOs, and so we've been meeting, having joint meetings with the policy, and we met in late April for 2 days in Washington, and worked with public transportation agencies. We've been working really closely with them. So we're having another call for coming up May 13th to talk about AMPO's draft policy framework for reauthorization, and also looking at a matrix of how we fit in with AASHTO and American, is it American Public Transit? Am I saying that right? So Brad, Steve, Lee, if you all have anything else to say, you know, this is up and coming. No one expected, I don't know if you did, but at AMPO, no one expected to see the Grow America Act coming out. We thought we might get another leaked document, but this is very official compared to last time.
Yes.
So,
yeah, it's just come out. Planning emphasis areas just came out recently too, so we're just waiting on getting more information about all those things. But yeah, that's the administration's reauthorization program proposal. 4 years, I think around $300 billion. It's out there now.
and there's a question.
Oh,
I just wanted to know, is this already passed, this is past Congress already, or is this just part of the MAP 21 bill?
This is a proposal to reauthorize MAP 21.
Okay, thank you.
So they usually give it a catchy acronym, like safety move to.
Right.
Kind of lulls
Yeah,
you
MAP
into.
21, yeah.
okay. Go ahead.
So the initial assessments that I've seen is nice Band-Aid, doesn't fix the problem. It's a temporary fix for the highway trust fund going forward, and not a fix that has been well received in the past as a solution. So very likely dead on arrival. However, there are some components that appear to be quite interesting, and maybe those components can be carried forward. But the initial analysis is not something that is going to pass.
I've been analyzing it for scope of work, so I just wanted to make sure that we're on track programmatically too.
Good, great. You have something in, or you're gonna tell us?
Just a real brief update on the SAVES program. Does anybody need a quick synopsis of the SAVES program? I think everybody here knows about it. We had a work group meeting on April 17th at DOT. We had most of the RPC show up. We had our work group members from T-Square, and we have a new program manager at T-Square named Beth King. We lost Justin Pelletier to Shipyard. He's a structural engineer there now. So we've worked through our draft attributes for the sidewalk and curb ramp inventory, as well as the culvert and stream crossing inventory. And right now, Beth is working with the Geological Survey to integrate the SAVES culvert data with the Geological Survey's culvert protocol data, so that we can kind of kill two birds with one stone and do the trainings at once and collect everything for both programs at the same time when we're out at the crossing. So hopefully we'll have everything worked out before the start of the collection season, and pretty much it. So we're moving forward with that initiative.
Okay, good. Now, project updates, anybody have any project updates?
I can just tell you my culvert grant is being reviewed by FEMA and provided some extra information to them, so.
I guess I'll give a couple. The bridge project, Route 9 Bridge over the Salmon Falls River, is under construction. Moment slab got put in, it's going along as scheduled. Maine DOT's taking the lead on that project, but everything's going good. RTE project received preliminary design approval, and we're right in the NEPA process. Went to the cultural resources meeting yesterday. So once we wrap up NEPA, we can get the notice to proceed on final design. So it should be hopefully within the next 6 to 8 weeks or so. So we can go out to bid this summer.
Any other business?
Just
Go ahead.
that we finally received the okay from DOT to move ahead with hiring our engineer to work on the Route 108 shoulder widening bikeway project, which is the southern piece from downtown Newmarket to the Newfields town line. And so we're going forward, getting the authorization from the town council, and we're going to hope to move that forward very quickly. We're going to be working with other engineers on that.
Any more project updates? Any other business? Okay, citizen forum. Any citizens here want to know? Just not. Okay, I guess we have
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Okay. Thanks for coming.